And now it is my great pleasure to introduce this year's opening keynote speaker, Her Royal Highness Princess Laurentien of the Netherlands. Princess Laurentien is the founder and director of the Missing Chapter Foundation, an organization aiming to introduce and familiarize current decision makers with the ideas of future decision makers on a number of critical issues. The Missing Chapter Foundation aims to promote sustainable decisions by initiating a continuous dialogue between decision makers, children, youth, and young professionals. Its mission is based on the fundamental premise that decisions are more durable and gain value if they take into account the sharp insights, logical questions, and surprising solutions from children and teenagers. Princess Laurentien's extensive philanthropic work has focused on promoting issues that aim to support the development of individuals and their impact on society, with particular emphasis placed on the fields of sustainability and literacy. She has been active in a field of sustainability and wildlife preservation for more than a decade. She is president of Fauna and Flora International, fellow at the European Climate Foundation, advisor of the Harbour of Rotterdam's Harbour Vision 2030, special advisor of Rewilding Europe, and a former senior advisor of WWF. In 2004, Princess Laurentien founded Reading and Writing Foundation, which works both in the Netherlands and internationally to address literacy among children and adults. The foundation raises awareness on the issue, supports initiatives in this field, and actively combats illiteracy through the Language for Life program. As part of her international work, Princess Laurentien is Special Envoy for UNESCO on literacy and development. In 2011, Androula Vassiliou, the European Commissioner for Education, appointed her as chair of the EU high-level group of experts on literacy, which presented its findings in 2012. Furthermore, Princess Laurentien is president of the European Cultural Foundation and honorary president or patron of a number of other organizations, such as the Dutch Association of Public Libraries. The topic of her speech today is Intergenerational Dialogue, Simply Powerful and Giant Leap Forward. Before we welcome her on stage, we will show a short video which is a concrete example of connecting generations and shows the value of empowering children as a change agent. Thank you.
Het is een trend. Steeds luxere douches en als het even kan, water van alle kanten.
En ik schrik er eerlijk van. Nederland schijnt minutenlang onder de douche te staan.
Gemiddeld douchen we in Nederland 9 minuten. Veel te lang, vinden kinderen.
Nou ja, 10 minuutjes.
Ja, dat kan dus echt
wij zijn er echt 5 te lang.
half uur.
En daarom vandaag een heuse oproep om niet langer te douchen dan 5 minuten.
Het zal niemand ontgaan zijn vandaag. Prinses Laurentien startte dus een opvallende actie, Waterspaarders.
Er is vandaag een dag in het leven geroepen, de Nationale Waterspaardersdag.
Vandaag was het zover. De eerste Nationale Waterspaardersdag.
Unilever zit hier heel erg sterk achter. Want wat blijkt is dat we, als we het over energiebesparing hebben, dat het, denken we heel snel aan producten moeten beter en producten moeten anders. Maar eigenlijk het consumentengedrag is ongeveer 2/3 van het energieverbruik. Frank Weijers, CEO van de Benelux van Unilever, zit hier ook met een enorme eigen betrokkenheid bij. En die zegt van ja, we moeten het dus anders doen.
Ik douche 3 minuten, maar als ik mijn haar was, waarschijnlijk iets langer dan 5 minuten.
En u wilt een eerlijk antwoord. Ik hou het niet bij.
En ik denk dat het wel eens langer is dan 5 minuten.
Ik denk dat ik wel eens over die 5 minuten heen ga, ja.
Van 5 tot 7 minuten of zoiets.
Ik denk langer dan 5 minuten.
Maar ik moet zeggen dat ik wel door de aankondiging en door deze dag waarschijnlijk toch wel geprikkeld zal worden om korter te gaan douchen.
Op 4 september was de eerste Nationale Waterspaardersdag in de Hermitage in Amsterdam. Hier kwamen kinderen en volwassenen bij elkaar om met elkaar in dialoog te gaan en op een ludieke wijze aandacht te vragen voor energiebesparing. Waterspaarders is een initiatief van de Missing Chapter Foundation, Unilever en het Wereld Natuurfonds. De Nationale Waterspaardersdag was een groot succes met veel media-exposure, wat onder andere zal bijdragen aan bewustwording en gedragsverandering.
Nu zijn onze mensen natuurlijk van de toekomst en zij moeten beleid gaan maken en keuzes gaan maken. Dus ik vind het heel erg belangrijk.
Het is fijn dat zij dus, nu een beetje de ambassadeurs zijn voor hun eigen toekomst en ook de onze. Kinderen die zijn heel belangrijk in het huishouden, in een familie, in een gezin. Kunnen ouders makkelijk een spiegel voorhouden, makkelijk aanspreken op hun gedrag.
Eigenlijk wat we laten zien is als we van 9 minuten, wat we nu gemiddeld douchen, naar 5 minuten teruggaan, dan besparen we dus 4 minuten. En 4 minuten staat bijvoorbeeld gelijk aan 2 jaar energie voor alle huishoudens in Nederland. Als dus iedereen dat gaat doen. Nou, dat lijkt me een mooie motivatie. En de kinderen die zeggen tegen ons gewoon doen en volhouden. Zo simpel is het.
Als je korter doucht, dan ben je beter voor het milieu, maar ook beter voor jezelf en je eigen portemonnee.
And just before Her Highness starts, if I can say that next year our 5th conference will take place in Thessaloniki. It's around Barcelona, so we'll see. Thank you, Her Highness.
Kalimera. It is such a pleasure to be at a conference that starts with so much thoughtfulness and where you can feel in every vibe of you as an audience, the leadership of the organization to be part of this. And I'm really honored to be here. And together with the European Cultural Foundation, there's a great ongoing relationship with the Stavros Niarchos Foundation, and we're really delighted. And later today, we will continue that partnership also with the city of Athens. As you also refer to, we live in a time of accumulative challenges of alarming magnitude. And all those issues require change. There is, as we know, about 1 billion people around the planet that live in extreme poverty. There are inequalities within countries, among countries that are rising. If we're going on the global warming rate as we are now, we're on a 4-degree trajectory, which we know is truly not sustainable. We know that 75% of our oceans are being overfished. In other words, we as mankind, we are eating up the planet at an unsustainable rate. This short movie that you saw, this example, shows what you can achieve when you think of a particular set of actors in society as change agents. And if you think of the perspective, who is the change agent who can help address these issues? In this program, for example, 30,000 children are the change agents within their families to take everybody along and say, why don't we just do it? And we're shifting the norm from the way that people use energy and use water. Now, I have to say that the alarming facts that we know, together with the insightfulness of children and the power of young people to help us think through, I have to say has changed my worldview forever. And it's also made me acutely aware of the passing nature of my own existence, I have to say. That when you are constantly in dialogue with children of 9 years old, 10 years old on real issues, they're not the ones who are going to make the decisions at this moment. They are not the ones on whose shoulders we put the decisions and the solutions, but they can help us think through in it. I'll come back to that. And I feel increasingly that children and young people are natural philanthropists. They don't think in terms of change because they have the power of not knowing how it was. They just think of how it should be, and they realize that what we need to do is the right thing. So they go to the very essence of the word philanthropy for me. They also make me realize that we have to think maybe sometimes more radically and more uncompromising. And I'll give you an example of that. The whole notion of sustainable development that we know and that we know from the Common Future report. As was put in the program as well, I will read the definition. The notion of sustainable development is meeting the needs of the present without compromising the needs of future generations to meet their own needs. But I have to say, I have an issue with that. I wonder if it's radical enough, because I wonder, with the way that we're taking decisions at the moment, for example, on climate change, and with the COP going forward in Paris later this year, sometimes this current generation, we find excuses to meet our own needs, to make the decisions, not really thinking about the compromising situation we put future generations in. So perhaps we should replace sustainability by future-proof. And if we think from that perspective, perhaps then we should turn the definition to making the decisions now that are necessary to enable future generations to meet their needs. In other words, flipping the perspective from the now to the future. And I feel that in the way that this conference program has been put together, so many different angles and perspectives are being raised touching on this, and specifically the role of the philanthropic sector within this. And that in essence, it's about the role of philanthropy as a change agent to achieve future-proof communities and societies. And I'll touch on two aspects. There are many dimensions and many ways to take the issues, but I touch on two issues. One is what I would call the systemic change and the role of philanthropy in relation to other players. And the other one is the generational change, who within the philanthropy sector can actually drive that change forward and how we should do that. First, on the systemic change. As you also refer to, traditionally, many of the societal issues were taken by the state, and the state would take issues on. But now, issues are so much more complex, and they require different approaches, both from a content point of view. Take, for example, the energy transition. We need and technology, and financing mechanisms, and consumer behavior, and policy making, and all of that together will find new solutions. So it also means that we need different players: government, corporations, civil society, citizens, and indeed philanthropy. For me, is about the combination of solutions. It's about having a long-term vision and ambitions and short-term targets. It's needed to have a long-term sustainability and sustaining power. It's about not giving up, because many of these issues are go to the heart of society, and it basically requires a willingness not to give up. And I see that, for example, in my work, both on sustainability, but also on literacy. You have to plow away and not give up. So you need to have the financial power, the staying power, to maintain that. It's a sense of innovation that is really needed on tackling these issues. And it's also having a mindset of cooperation, because, as I said, nobody can actually do it alone and in isolation. Two examples of this new way of how we organize the addressing of issues and the role of the philanthropy sector within that. There's much talk also in the Netherlands about the Participatory Society. And there's many ways to look at a notion like that, but you also realize it's not a shifting the responsibility, but it becomes a joint responsibility. And there's an initiative where the corporate sector, government, and the philanthropy sector are working together to identify pressing issues that require so many different angles that are perhaps not so easily boxed in, and you actually require everybody to work together. And for example, issues that may fall between the cracks, like investing in young people from an early age and growing up safely and healthily, it's not an easy issue. It's got health issues, it's got education, it's got family values, and that's a typical issue that a joint platform can pick up. Another interesting example, I feel, of the philanthropy sector playing a very innovative role is in the post-2015 development agenda and the set of 17 sustainable development goals. Now, traditionally, perhaps, the philanthropy sector would say this is something for the states, this is not for the philanthropy sector. But now there's a platform, a partnership platform for philanthropy, and it's really about helping that process with philanthropic input to make the Sustainable Development Goals successful. It's playing an active role in that international field. And the importance of the implications of, and the commitment of the philanthropy sector cannot be underestimated. This sector is not ruled by political horizons. It already has an amazing investment worldwide of $59 billion into development, and it should be having a mindset of cooperation. I feel that there, within the philanthropy sector, much can still be done to actually cooperate with different players. Everybody has to get out of their comfort zone a little bit. That was the systemic change. Now I'll move to the generational change, what I mean by that. It's perhaps less of a macro level that I just touched upon, and it has to do with the dynamics of the generations within the philanthropy sector, and especially I work a lot with family foundations. This is obviously a grand example of a family foundation and the issues that we see. And I feel that the Stavros Niarchos Foundation, with its innovative approach, is slightly different and really a wonderful example, and your thought leadership within the sector is much needed. Because what we see, and what is underpinned by research, is that, for example, an issue like sustainability traditionally has much less investment than other issues that are perhaps more clearly identified. So what we see happening within the sector is, perhaps is a strong word, but a clash of generations, where older generations have different worldview than younger generations of philanthropists. More traditionally, perhaps there was more of a drive to do and to invest from a passion point of view, from an interest point of view, rather than to turn around and say, what does society need, what do communities need as an investment? That it is a different approach to how you determine what to invest your philanthropic money in. So what we feel is needed, and where there's an increasing trend with an increasing number of young philanthropists coming on board, is a neutral space, a shared space for shared learning between generations to actually develop a shared worldview, to realize on the basis of knowledge, for example, on climate change, which is an issue that is not invested in at all, let alone an issue like women and climate change, even though that women and children are the ones most affected by climate change, and to actually say those are the pressing issues that do need investment. But for that, different generations need to come together and look at it from different perspectives, but get an understanding of the shared ambitions. So it's a great opportunity, also within the sector, to develop alignment between the older and younger generations. Together, I feel you have more power. You have the wisdom of the older generation, but you have the insights of newer generations, perhaps different ways to make an impact through digital means, for example, and that should actually come together. And I think much can still be done within the philanthropy sector forward. And it does, I realize, take courage and a truly altruistic love of mankind, as the word philanthropy suggests, to step over your own boundaries and to say, and to be guided by what's needed to be achieved to make our societies more future-proof. I see within this work of putting decision makers together with children that it needs an openness of mindset to do something a little bit different than what you usually are used to. So back to my question about who's the change agent. The question is, who within your work, and you all have your tremendous areas of activities, and the richness of this program is reflecting your work and the diversity of your work. So the question for me is always, who is the change agent? Who has the inner drive, the possibilities, the knowledge, and the mindset, as well as the power to effect structural change needed to create those future-proof societies? In other words, is it children? Then in that case, we need to empower them to make that change happen. Not in isolation, but empower them to link them to those making the decisions. They deserve that dedicated support to help achieve their mission. Sometimes it's children, sometimes it's women, sometimes it's decision makers. Everyone needs to be empowered, and hence the importance of the philanthropic sector to make that happen. Two examples, for example, is in my work is the Kids Council, where now 21 companies have a Kids Council that is not the ones making the decisions, but they are actually the ones advising the board of directors and looking at the dilemmas from a completely different way. And I have to tell you, it is truly magical what happens in the mindsets of the boards to look at issues from such a different perspective. And another initiative we're just starting, it's Kids Moving the World, where we want to empower children to make a difference within their communities and to say, if you apply your dedication, we can actually match that and help make that happen. The sense of empowerment, of investing in children and young people to make them realize your voice matters, and if you apply yourself, you can make a difference, I find is truly important. Experts, they teach us that effective grant making requires, first, the relevance of the mission, a willingness to take risks, a willingness for long-term investments, and a willingness to cooperate. When you ask children about what it takes and why adults have such a hard time doing the right thing sometimes, they give us very interesting advice, and I'll just share a few thoughts with you. Children tell us that adults often skip the first step. Children tell us that our steps are too big. They tell us that we often think about ourselves first and not the other. Children teach us that you can never do something alone. And children tell us that we should never forget, but adults do forget, why we do something. If you start with the why question and you continue to ask yourself why, you will always end up to the core of the problem and therefore the solution. Again, I am deeply impressed with the Stavros Niarchos Foundation. I'm deeply impressed with how resilient you are and the power you are and the determination that you have to also invest in the hardship that Greece is going through at the moment. And I am delighted, really, and honored to be here. I hope that you will have 2 wonderful days of deep and thoughtful conversations, but certainly the cadre has been set by the organizers to have those thoughtful discussions. I hope that my thoughts will help guide you through the coming days and take this notion of who is the change agent, who do we need to empower to make change happen, perhaps will help you guide through your discussions. And I'd like to end with a quote of Albert Einstein that somehow I feel that you're all probably familiar with, perhaps can also be a guiding notion that you cannot solve a problem with the same thinking as the one that created it. Thank you very much.